Welcome to Capital College, and thanks for tuning in. Capital College is an ongoing series of events to help your business grow. We invite knowledgeable speakers to lead a lively discussion and give a very good presentation on information that will help your business grow. And they should provide an ability for you to help your business plan for the future and always do better. Also, these events provide an opportunity to network with your peers and make new connections. Capital Bank is very pleased to provide this series of events to support your local business. Helping business grow is our tagline, and this is one way we put that phrase into action.
As Scott said in the introduction, I have worked with many of the big brands in the world, but this presentation is something that is based around something that I believe very deeply, and that is whether you're a big company, a small company, or a medium-sized company, you have to pay the same attention to your brand in order to have marketing success. So that is where this whole presentation is going to be driven from. We're going to be getting into about 12 slides. I'm going to go very quickly through them, just 5 minutes or so. And then, as we say, we're going to open the floor up for questions, and so we can delve more deeply into any questions that you have. So, Susan, next slide, please. Thank you. So, what is a brand? There are a million different definitions of it if you go onto Google. I've chosen 3 here. David Aaker and Peter Seeley are just considered brand gurus in this space. A brand is a promise that when kept creates preference. Of course, there is a loyalty component to that. I've thrown in the Frank Lucas American Gangster. I don't know who has seen that movie. It's a great movie, but he does have a line in there about branding. Now, it is about illegal substances. But brand names mean something. Consumers rely on them to know what they're getting. They know that the company isn't going to try and fool them with an inferior product. They buy a Ford, they know they're getting a Ford, not a Datsun. Blue Magic, that's a brand name. Like Pepsi, that's a brand name. I stand behind it, I guarantee it. Now, I think that is a very kind of pertinent way of describing, especially what small business and medium-sized businesses, how really where you have owners and managing principals who are really front and center of their company. I think that's a very pertinent quote. Susan, go on to the next slide. Thank you. So brands work in 3 main ways. And the ones that I've put up here are, they influence consumer choice. You've probably all seen, you all know about the Crest versus Colgate type of branding. I tried to get some local ones. Fitz versus Eastern Motors. I think you're probably all familiar with both auto dealerships, and you can know from their marketing and the way they position their brand that they're appealing to different audiences. Five Guys versus Burger King. They drive company marketing. They focus strategy. It tells them what to do and what not to do. Now, I photocopied or photoshopped the cigarette into Mickey's mouse. This is not something that Disney has ever seen. But what essentially it means is that the brand, when they have their brand strategy in place, the people who are directing the business have to make decisions every day about what works for their brand and what is going to be detrimental to their brand. And obviously, if Disney was to put their name to a packet of cigarettes, you can easily see how that's going to make the brand decline in value. Brands also create equity to be leveraged. Now, big companies do this all the time. Nike started off with their shoes, and that then gave them license to move into clothing, golf, and so on and so forth. However, this works for small companies as well. I don't know who amongst us is familiar with the college hunks hauling junk, but when I was trying to find a local example, the father of it is my dentist actually, and so it came to mind, hey, let me see what College Hunks is doing at the moment. And actually it was great because they have moved out from just hauling junk to into a furniture moving business. So their original brand has helped them extend into new lines, new product lines. The other thing that brands do is they generate financial return on P&L impact. Now this is obviously critical, I'm sure, for everybody in this room. because you're all probably wondering what kind of spend you need to be putting into your brand development and your marketing activities. So what are the P&L impacts? Price. If you have a strong brand, it protects you from always having to compete on price. When you have a brand, you can say, well, you can go with the other guy, but with us, you're getting what we stand for as a company. It creates loyalty, so it's repeat business. And the other P&L impact is that customer acquisition, so you get your lift. And lastly, balance sheet impacts, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, I'm sure, in the panel part, which is a brand is a quantifiable asset on your balance sheet. It's a very hard way of getting there to know exactly what it is, but Capital One's brand, for example, is worth about $600 million on the P&L. Bank of America's brand would be worth it probably was worth $4 billion. Now it's probably worth $1 billion. But you get my point. Next slide. So to be successful in marketing, you need to have a brand strategy in place. Essentially, it is your cornerstone, it is your guiding star, it is your compass, whatever analogy you may want to make. Brand strategy is the foundation of everything you do with your marketing and your branding. There are numerous components. We won't get into them right now because of time, but we'll come back to them. But the main part we're going to focus on today is brand positioning. And what brand positioning essentially is how it is that you differentiate from your competitors and put that out into the marketplace so that your customers, prospects, understand what it is that makes you different and why it is that they should care about you and come and do business with you. We'll get into some of the others, as I said, in the panel discussion. But for right now, within brand strategy, brand positioning is the core element from which the other components derive. So, actually, and skip one more, please, Susan. Thank you. Now, this is a template for what needs to be considered when you are thinking about the brand positioning for your own companies. These are the questions that it answers. Who is your target audience? And what is their main need or frustration? Very important part. And we're going to get to some examples on the next couple of slides that is going to make this more tangible. Your business. So your business is just your company name, is the frame of reference. So Capital Bank is a bank. Otara, my company, is a brand consultancy. That your brand promises singular focus claim of superiority because, now this is where you put down what it is that makes your company stand out as a brand. Going back to the Fitz auto dealership, they have 138 point inspection for all their cars that they very proudly put on all their marketing. That is one of their justifications for why it is that you should come to Fitz. And the benefit links back to the frustration that your audience has. And basically your company, your brand pays off on that frustration. So let's see a couple of examples of this. The next one is FedEx. This is, in my view, brilliant. So what is FedEx? FedEx is for deadline-dependent people. Sorry, one back. Deadline-dependent people, FedEx is the overnight delivery service that is always the most reliable because it has a sophisticated package tracking system so that you know your package will reach its destination on time. You'll see there's no puffery, there's no generalizations. It is very specific, and that is what every brand positioning should be about. What we would not want to see here is that FedEx is the overnight delivery system that is always the best. Always the best. What does that mean? Right? It's too broad. So when you're thinking about it for your own brand, really synthesize down to get the core essence. We'll see another great example here. Michelin. So in the early 80s, all tires were basically sold on technical reasons. At that time, Michelin was the #4 tire company in the United States, and it blew this category open from how to market tires. So what did it do? It decided that Michelin to people who want quality, long tread life, and value for money. That is across the board. Everybody, when they're buying tires, wants that same few elements. Michelin is the car tire that has the premium quality to ensure the safety of your family. That is the genius here. The safety of your family. Tires had never been sold on family safety before. They've been sold on the dimensions and the tread and so on. And why do they do it? Because our tires are engineered with your family's safety in mind, so you feel comfortable spending a little bit more, that's your price protection, and to be a good provider for your family. So let's see how this translates into marketing. So if we skip to the next slide, one more. This is an example that proves the point of the brand positioning is the center point for all your marketing activities. So here you have two ads from those two examples. You take the FedEx ad. You see here that somebody is putting the trombone into the FedEx package and it's being delivered to what we presume to be the person in the orchestra. That orchestra was going to play that night. He relied on FedEx to get him the trombone because he needed to have it for the concert. And then look at the Michelin example. This was the ad that they came out with when they in 1985, and there's no technical thing here really. It's the baby that is in there that is the driving sales point. And so, okay, they did this, so what was the result? Well, I mean, obviously we all know these are great big companies, but Michelin did and has down on record that their brand positioning that then opened the doors to all this new way of marketing tires based around the safety of their family took them from the number 4 position in the United States to the number 2 position over the course of 4 years. Next slide, please, Susan. Now, so I've just given you a couple of examples of big companies doing this. And, you know, a lot of people, well, we don't have the time or the ability and so on to do this, and is it really necessary for a small company? So this is just 2 companies that I'm working with right now. Act for Alexandria is a not-for-profit based in Alexandria. And when I was in with them, I was with the board, and I asked them what ACT stood for, and all 10 to 12 board members started talking and couldn't quite synthesize it, and it was chaos. And they couldn't articulate within their own company exactly what it was that ACT did, why they did it, who it was for, how it was going to benefit the people that it was working on behalf of, and so on and so forth. So the exercise that I took them through was essentially, let's get this down on paper, and we have the resulting brand positioning that has now acted as the cornerstone for all their marketing activities, given clarity throughout the organization. Entertainment Exchange is a small company based in Silver Spring that does entertainment for weddings and corporate events and such like. 2 owners, the 2 owners similarly. When we took them through this exercise, they were like, huh, I never thought about it that way. Oh, okay, well now we understand how we're going to need to develop the website, how we're going to need to communicate when we're talking to corporate clients versus the bride-to-be, for example. So it is for small companies as much as for large companies.
As Scott mentioned, I'm a CPA, and so the real question in the financial minds of the business owners is, where is the value in my company? With respect to value of branding and brand, you are going to find, as William mentioned, that there are several current events that you're going to see. Number 1 is your revenue stream, your profit margin improvement because of your branding. And when you get to the point of potentially selling your company, you're going to be valuing that brand, and your consumer, your buyer, your target is going to be valuing that brand with respect to the price that they're offering you in that negotiation. There are generally 3 methods that are used for valuing companies: the income approach, the market approach, and the asset approach. In the income approach, it's just as it says. It's generally based on historical information of income streams. And remember, if you're well branded, if you're well structured, you're going to see a significant potential increase in your income stream, and that income stream is an indicator of past history, but it's also a potential indicator of the future economic benefits of the buyer of your organization. So certainly the income approach is one approach that's used for valuing companies of which your brand is a component of that value. Second approach is the market approach. The market approach is generally based on a reference to sales of similar companies in the marketplace. It's generally used as a guideline for public companies. So if I'm selling my McDonald's franchise, it's relatively easy to be able to find similar information and comparable other franchises of McDonald's, possibly in similar locations, in similar cultural centers, in similar size of communities. The comparables are fairly consistent and can generally be more easily derived. So this method is more easily used with publicly traded companies because of the ability to gather information that's comparable. However, if it's Greta's Hamburger Joint, and I happen to sell cheeseburgers, fries, and milkshakes, using this methodology is probably completely irrelevant because Greta's Hamburger Joint has really no reference, comparability, so to speak, to a McDonald's franchise. The third approach is the asset approach. In the asset approach, there is an evaluation of the fair market value. Fair market value is what a willing buyer is going to pay a willing seller for that business, in this case, or that product. The fair market value of the assets are broken down by component pieces. Some are more easily measured, such as the tangible pieces. In this case, the real estate. This happens to be an orthopedic practice. If the orthopedic practice owns the bricks and mortar, the building, there are comparables of fair market values for that portion of the assets. The other assets, the intangibles, are the ones where the brand is generally a component piece of. Intangible assets, literally your goodwill, is comprised of a number of components, including your name, your reputation, your customer loyalty, your location, for example, your products and other similar factors, many of which are very closely tied to your brand and what you've been able to accomplish through building your brand. Barbara's going to be talking to you about rights and privileges and protecting those assets, so I'm going to go on to the next slide because goodwill can actually come in two forms. One is personal goodwill. The second is business goodwill. Let's say this is Dr. Jones. He's a sole practitioner in an orthopedic practice. One doc in an office, one nurse. Most likely, a lot of the patients come to him because of Dr. Jones. In valuing the personal good or the goodwill of Dr. Jones's practice, much of that goodwill is going to be tied to Dr. Jones. So when Dr. Jones retires, walks out the door, the value of his goodwill, of his trade, if you will, of his brand is housed in him. So the goal for Dr. Jones before he sells his practice is to expand his practice, to make appropriate growth in his practice so that upon target sell, he has an opportunity for that to be conformed or to be transformed into business goodwill. For example, Dr. Jones builds his practice into the Jones Orthopedic Surgical Center or the Jones Sports Medicine Center. Again, whatever the target audience is, he brings in hand specialists. How many bones are in a hand? A bazillion. It's a very specialized orthopedic practice that's a hand surgeon generally. Do I have any surgeons in the audience? Another might be a knee surgeon. Another might be a back surgeon. As we know, surgery on the back is a very delicate practice. It's not something that a generalist would take on. Their target might very well have already established some significant referral sources from general practitioners, from those sports centers, possibly from physical therapists, because in the process of providing other medical services to those patients, they needed, for the first time in their life, an orthopedic surgeon, or their need is so great, and their body, of course, is so precious to them, we've only got one chance with it, folks, that you want the very best. You want the very highest quality. You want the experts. by doing so, he is transforming his knowledge, his expertise into a team of individuals, workplace in force. He's got a tremendous staff of nurses. Everyone from his receptionist entirely down through his organization. She is the director of first impressions when anyone walks into his location, so that there is a magnet that is felt when you come into this practice center that is then a brand that can be transferable in goodwill to the next generation of owners. Much more easily transferred than the personal goodwill of one individual. And the bottom line is, folks, that if you're not focusing on your brand value, it's probably shrinking and walking out the door. Barbara, tell us how we can protect it.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name's Barbara Burschler, and I'm an attorney. I've been practicing intellectual property for quite a while now, and I'm glad to see some friends in the audience. Okay, from the point of view of you've got a mark. I'm going to use the word trademark or service mark, because from the legal point of view, that's what we're basically talking about. It breaks down to marks, and when you have one, you need to take steps to protect it. You need to figure out how you're going to identify a strong one, and then the steps you're going to take in order to protect it, because you want it to last and to withstand other kind of competition and things. So we could go to the first. So what is a mark, or what is a trademark or brand? And it's quite a variety of possibilities that you can come up with. It can be a word or design. It can even be a sound. And I don't know how many of you are as old as I am, but if you remember that NBC, there was a 3-note sound, and I can still hear it in my head, although I can't duplicate it, that when you heard that, you thought NBC. So that's the way that marks and brands, etc., can all be developed. And what the mark then does, it indicates to the consuming public, because that's who it is that it's being addressed, that there is a source behind these goods and services. And it reflects some of what William was talking about of this being able to get the word out to your audience. And in order for a mark to be a mark, it always has to be used in conjunction with an existing business or an enterprise. So even nonprofits can have marks, and think of the Red Cross and so forth. Now, the purpose of having a mark, in addition to making all the money, is that you're trying to have the public not be confused about the source of the goods and the services. There's lots of people that are selling hamburgers and hot dogs. So how does one, as the public, distinguish, well, what kind of hot dog am I or hamburger am I going to go for? And so that's why you want the public not to be confused, because I'm assuming not many of us are going to come up with such a unique service or product that we can just stand on that and walk away. So it serves the purpose of helping the public not to be confused. It distinguishes you from your competitors, because they're doing the same thing as you are. But you're also, by protecting it, you're not allowing others to ride on what you've built up. You're trying to prevent that somebody else from taking your mark and using it in some way and getting a free ride. So what this is a graphic that's just showing you the scope of, as we said, the possibilities of what can go into making your brand and so forth. And in many cases, businesses will conceivably have hundreds of marks. You think about McDonald's and some of the other large enterprises. They have many, many marks. Every time they turn around or put something out, they consider it a mark, and they then go forward to try to protect it. So you can see, and of course in the case of franchised restaurants or franchised businesses, they develop whole themes. So again, the branding isn't just a word or even a logo. It can be a whole look. your color scheme, etc. From the legal point of view, in order to get a mark that you can then really defend, and I often talk about you want to have sharp elbows. You want it to be a strong mark. And from a legal point of view, that means it's inherently distinctive. So that by simply seeing the mark, the person that your customer, they inherently understand there is a source behind this. They may not know it's Miss Brown or it's Dr. Jones or something, but they know that there is a body there behind it that is going to stand behind that brand. Weaker marks are when they're descriptive. And oftentimes people come to me and, you know, they've developed their mark, or this is what they come up with, and it's basically telling the customer, well, this is what I do. Well, in many cases, you're not going to be able to get the kind of protection that you think you would like to have, to say, well, this is my mark and don't step on me, kind of a thing. And then, of course, if it's a generic term that somebody were to come up with, then there's no protection at all. And these three words that we have there, originally they had been marks, but they came to mean the item, and therefore everybody can use them. Nobody can stop you from doing something and saying escalator. Next. So my advice to people, and as trying to go towards developing strong marks, is this gives you some guidance. And so clearly, if you come up with a made-up word, well, then it's hard for anybody else to say, well, hey, I came up with that made-up word too. So here's some examples. Then, if it's totally arbitrary or fanciful, then that is also good. And an example I give, okay, with what does a piece of fruit have to do with computers or software? Absolutely, positively nothing. And yet, of course, Apple is one of the strongest brands in the world. And I think that BlackBerry took a page out of their book and came up with another piece of fruit that they could use. Apple couldn't stop them, but that's where you can see that if you just really reach in coming up with or trying to develop your mark, it's going to reward you, because it's hard for anybody else to then come into that space. Suggestive is, again, I'm so happy to be washing my dishes, etc. And then, of course, designs. And what is easier than that little swoosh? I just say the word swoosh. I don't have to say Nike. I just say swoosh. And I'm sure most of you would think of Nike. Now, ways to protect it, etc., is you must continuously use the mark. Do not hold back. Once you've got it, flaunt it. And so you absolutely want to use it continuously with your goods and services. You want to police the mark. You want to keep a lookout to see, are people coasting? Are they trying to use yours, incorporated in their marketing process? So you want to not allow that to happen. If you're licensing a mark, then you've got to monitor how the people that you're licensing, how they use it, because you don't want them to do things that are going to diminish your reputation, the reputation that goes with that mark. You address infringements. Now, if you're eligible to get federal registration, I would encourage you to do that. And an important eligibility is that you're doing business in what's called interstate commerce. If you're just focused in Maryland or in the county of Montgomery or something like that, you would not be eligible for federal registration. But if you're doing business across state lines, then you clearly want to consider getting federal registration. Then you get the option of being able to have that R with a circle. And if you do get federal registration, then you want to comply with the requirements that the USPTO calls for. Okay, I guess that comes to an end. So, just keep in mind, you want strong marks.